We're going to get right into this pretty quick. And I'm not going to like bring up all kinds of screens or anything like that. We're going to just talk through some stuff, get some folks in here, and then have a conversation with folks in chat on this merge. There's claim that it's going to be close and soon. We'll see if that's actually the case. But there's a lot of questions related to what are people going to do with their graphics cards? What are we going to mine? How are we going to handle it from a BBT standpoint? And then what are you going to do? What happens when you have like a large disruption in proof of work? So we're going to get into this. I got people saying, finally, BBT's here. I haven't had a video. I actually haven't had a live stream in like 2 weeks with you guys. And I've had just a couple of videos. We've tried to do a couple content-related videos related to dollar cost averaging, what to do in a bear market, kind of what we're doing. Hopefully you guys can hear me and everything's nice and clear. Let's bring this level up a little bit to increase the volume because it looks like my mic's a little low. How about now? You guys should be able to hear me pretty loudly, but I want to make sure that it's not interfering. Let's go here. Shouldn't be bouncing off the meter here, but just making sure you guys can hear me loud and clear. I had to update software. Every time I don't do this for a while, all the stuff is, the levels are off and things happen. The stuff gets updated and it messes up things. Mic audio is perfect. That's good to hear. So, yeah, it's been super busy in our front. And that's just not me just telling you guys that. Literally, I don't think I've been as busy as I have been in any other market time in the history of mining. And not just the mining stuff, just a lot of the other services and stuff we're doing. It's eating up a lot of the time. And, you know, with having a team before, for people that don't know us and BBT, I mean, we've been around since 2013, and it's just been a few folks in and out as people have been around me and we've learned together on builds and stuff. It wasn't really super formalized. Really around 2016 is when we kind of formalized it more, but like it really got an emphasis this year, this past year. So our team expanded to 9 people. We've since pulled back a few people. We've had a few people leave just for other opportunities, which is great. I'm good for them. But it's a growing team and it's a growing space. So it's kept a lot of our time. So I haven't had the time I've wanted to with you guys on the channel to kind of go through things like this, which I think are vital. Because we live, eat, and breathe it every day. And a lot of the home miner have other things. Obviously, you guys have families. You guys have maybe a primary job, and the mining is the side hustle. And you don't have time to peruse the internet and try to learn all the things. So part of what myself and a lot of the other channels have done, and I see Son of a Tech on there just every day hitting it. I see Red Panda Mining. I see a lot of people trying to provide you guys good content. And it's kind of like in my back pocket, I'm like, you know, the community's being taken care of. These guys are covering most of the stuff that I would have been covering before, and they're doing a great job at it. So I don't feel, quote unquote, as obligated to help do some of that stuff as much. These guys are crushing it. So like the things that I want to try to make sure we spend the time with on my side is really around the more business structures, what to do, and the more, business decision-making, architectural stuff, things that matter, and the things as we go through and build out like a large farm, as we scale up our size, bring that kind of content to you guys and make sure you guys know what to do with that. And like right now, the clear and present thing, if you've been following anything, is what happens with Ethereum mining moving forward if the merge happens on September 19th. That's the kind of notional date that's being thrown out there. What are the mechanics? So I kind of take a step back and you look at it from a few different perspectives. You have the thing that's going to occur. Mining will go away from Ethereum. If that takes place, what do we do with the GPUs? And we've went through this a few times. We have models out there for you guys of looking at the networks. What are the variables? Though the variables are the hash rate that's in Ethereum. We know that. What we don't know on the Ethereum hash rate is how much of that is an ASIC. We can speculate, and the speculation estimations out there are around 40% of the Ethereum network is some level of an ASIC or of an FPGA that's been customized with a bit stream to handle the ETH hash algorithm. And a part of those, so let's say that's the current Ethereum hash rate is around 900 terahash right now. A little over. It's actually going up a little bit. I just was out there looking at it today just to take a glance of, the pullback. It went as low as 870 terahash in total from 1.1 petahash. So that's a pretty large swing. And anybody that's been in the mining space for any amount of time, you'll see that was an expansive amount of hash rate. Now, the speculation I have seen on there, and I can't confirm it, but we've seen a lot of the E9 availability come out from Bitmain. The question is how long were E9s on the Ethereum network, and is that the powering down of some of those E9s? And if that ends up being 100 terahash of E9s, that would take you from 1 to 1 full petahash, so a whole 100 terahash. And then you would have another 130 terahash being turned off from people that are just looking at the ETH price at close to $1,000 when it was down to 1,000 and going, yeah, this isn't profitable for me at whatever kilowatt hour you're paying, and people powering down. And that's what happens on these networks. You have a retraction of hash rate on them, and then it's like a rolling wave where the hash rate will come down. You'll run a calculator a few weeks later. You're like, I powered down. I cleaned up my machines. What's the network look like? Well, Ethereum pumps up to $1,500 and you have 874 terahash on the network. And that's going to be a problem that you're going to look at and go, wait a minute here. Now this is profitable again for me at 12 cents per kilowatt. And you may turn back on, and you'll see that network start to click back up as more and more people see the ability to get back in and start mining that makes sense for their power rate. And you'll have this kind of ebb and flow. The larger swings typically are either large farms or some kind of testing of something that's new that hasn't made it to market yet. And you'll see that testing wing come up, and then they'll put them for sale. They need to package them, validate that everything's good to go with them, put them back in and get them ready for sell. If that's what's happening with the E9, good question. The problem is there's not a lot of open information of the way Bitmain internally works, and if they put those on test benches and leave them, what's their burn-in test? They're obviously going to be mining the main net. This is this is what happens, right? Like if you are a producer of an ASIC, are you going to run that power usage on each one of those on something that's not making you money or something that makes you money? So it makes sense that they would put them on there. I'm not necessarily faulting them for that. It's more of if they let them run for 6 months and they don't sell them to anybody, and then the situation changes and then they put them up for sale. And we've seen that with the E3. We've seen that and possibly with the E9 now of what's the manufacture date versus when you get them. And is there, some obvious gaming there? The network tells all. This is the one thing I love about, the crypto space is we can see, a high, participation, and then we can see a pullback on a participation, and the network shows it. And I see some people commenting, try 36 cents. My dude, if you're paying 36 cents for power, I am so sorry. That's terrible. And I've seen some crazy peak numbers. Some people have situations where they have an ebb and flow of when they're going to mine and not. And some people mine from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, a.m. So 12 o'clock p.m. or 12 o'clock a.m. through 6 o'clock a.m. because they have a lower power rate. Some people get all the way down to 5 cents during that time, and their peak rates are like 16 cents. So you're only mining for a part of the day. And the way you would do that, and we actually have a spreadsheet that I can't wait to share with you guys. It's not ready yet, but it shows load factoring, because I think it's going to be pretty critical given the dynamics that we have on variable power rates right now, is that you guys need another tool. And actually the tool makers, if there's developers that are following this that make calculator tools and that stuff, what's needed is this summation of when it's optimally time for you to mine. Because some people that have these expensive power rates, you got to look at it like, if you got to look at that variable, and it might make sense for you to not mine during the day, but take a shot at night, and you can set your rig to just mine during certain times. And the reality is that you will be able to participate and not have a huge expansive high bill and still be able to get, 50% of the load. Now, in that particular case, you can only mine for 6 hours and in a 24-hour period and have a low price. And then I think it switches to like 9 cents and then goes to like 16 to 20 cents for some people. Our rates, around here, and what we've done here in our area, because of a lot of stranded power when it comes to windmill farms and things that have been built up around here, but there's just not enough transmission to move that power, they have the windmills turned off. And because there's not the demand. The last 3 weeks, the demand has been there. I think everything has been online because it's been so hot in the Midwest US that everybody has everything on. I mean, I saw at Hoover Dam yesterday, it looks like it lost a transformer and somebody caught it, because there's always cameras on there in the day. So it's just bound that somebody was looking at the dam and then one of the transformers blew up. And if you look at the Southwest and you look at the high heat, which they typically have, but we have it's not unseasonable for this area, for at least in the US. And I know the UK brethren over there that have crazy heat levels right now. There's a huge strain on the power systems right now. So, you had Texas shutting down last week, and this week's not going to be any better. I mean, around here, we're going to get to 103, which about 41 C temperature wise, which is very hot. And so the load factor is very high on the power companies right now, and they're charging more. So a lot of miners have to adjust. And I think this is big and small guys both have to look at it and look at that ebb and flow of when it makes sense to mine. So it's just another dimension. You always hear us, when a lot of us guys that are trying to explain some of the power costing and what the ops cost side of it is, I think it's now got some more nuance to it, where you need to look at your rates and look at it if it changes. So I'm kind of beating this one in right now because I think people have an opportunity to still continue to mine, but mine during those low cost times for people. Yeah, and I saw somebody says I can get 3 cents from 12 to 9 a.m., but it's only it's 20 cents any other time. So yeah, they're Mike in the chat is explaining that exact thing. We're lucky around here where it's a fixed cost. They have long-term contracts where they've been able to negotiate a particular rate, and like our rates have not adjusted. But that's always like, will some existential circumstance that causes everything to go up. We have crazy inflation right now in the well, relatively speaking. I know I have a world audience here. The inflation in the U.S. is going up. So 9%, 10%, 15%, whatever you want to actually call it. There's an adjusted number, and then there's the reality that we all live in. But if that causes the power companies to have higher costs somewhere, even if they have fixed contracts, they may have to break those. And I don't know what the impact of that is. But right now, like, we have a fixed rate and we've been good. Who knows if they have to break that contract and say, hey, sorry, our costs have went up so much, we either got to raise prices or we're going to be out of business. This is what everybody has to deal with. And that's part of that contractual break. You have to form business around rules and laws and compliance, because it gives you the leverage and it gives you the correct leverage to make decisions for your business and any kind of build out you're doing. You got to base it on something. You got to base it on a rate that you can get. You got to base it on your estimates that you get from, pricing out how much the labor is going to be and the material cost is. and then you go and pull the trigger. But at the end of the day, if some of those variable costs change on you, it kind of puts you in a bad situation. That's kind of what's happening to a lot of the miners in general, not just excluding the fact that Ethereum's, one of the sources for the GPU miners is potentially changing here soon. There's also a lot of other cost factoring here. So what I try to help everybody understand is everybody around the world right now, by and large, is dealing with the same thing. So if you're looking at your power bill and you're going, what the hell? Know that that's transcendent and that we're all in the same kind of pain right now, by and large, and for most people. And that, how is that going to affect? Well, it's going to affect certain things to turn off, and it's going to, your profitability is going to be kind of all over. Now, switching gears back to Ethereum, we have a lot of people here now in the chat, and I want to make sure that I can kind of cover what the core source of what we were talking about today, not just about power rates and all that stuff, is the Ethereum merge. So I have been tracking. I know I haven't had a lot of videos with you guys recently, just because of how busy we've been with doing this build, but I wanted to take some time today and kind of go through it. So let's look at timelines. Let's look at what's going on right now, of what's been at least talked about, and then what's the impacts of those. So right now, I think the next one is, I always pronounce this wrong, but I think it's Groli. I think somebody can fix my pronunciation of that. But there's the Groli testnet. So it's Goerili, I think. Testnet, which is as close as you can from a public testnet as their goal to see on the next, the next merge test. So that's like August 5th timeframe right now. And then after that, they're going to have like 20 shadow forks to test all the different clients. And I actually had some detail on this. So when you look at it, from like what's going to happen, let me see here to make sure I get the shadow fork numbers correctly. So they want to test out, the study defined how the combination of Ethereum's 4 execution layers and 5 consensus layers will perform under proof of stake. So the reality is these shadow forks that they'll do with that is there's, it's a multi-client environment. And there's several execution layers that are going to be involved in this. Because remember, the merge is just the consensus layer moving over to proof of stake. And you're still going to have the ETH1 execution layer still in play. So like all the stuff that all the smart contracts and all that other stuff still going to be sitting on Ethereum 1. And it's going to inherit the security from proof of stake. So where the difference is compared, I see people saying like, Solana and some of these other issues, that are potential with proof of stake. Like Ethereum's taking a different approach on it, and I'm not trying to sell you into proof of stake. I am not convinced right now. I think it's not all the way there. I do not obviously agree with the merge yet. I think they should stand on their own. Like they've laid it long enough, and the tech debt risk, I think, is, in my opinion, from a developer hat and an architecture hat, I think it's way too high. But that's my more conservative look at trying to do it. And everybody's going to wrap my opinion on it like, well, you're a miner, and of course you're going to say that. But I'm trying to take it from an architectural view, the known tech debt on the Ethereum 1 side, from, the risk of inheriting that. And then there's all kinds of other things, from acetation to asynchronous communications, to keep 2 networks. And I don't care if you're even in a centralized network. So if I had full control of it, I can run into problems. So where I have it in a mostly decentralized fashion, I'm concerned. So to say the least, I think other people would be concerned, and hopefully those people are adding a little more conjecture to it than just stating it like I am, that they're going to point to certain things. I think some of the Cornell papers that come out point to some of the risk with it, and hopefully people take a real candid look at it before they actually agree to this switch. But part of this exercise on August 5th is to give the space as close of a like-for-like network-to-network public testnet versus public mainnet that will switch in September 19th, to make sure that things are going to be at least functionally okay from the things that are eyes wide open you can see. It's the stuff that's always the risk of the things that you don't know. And does somebody have some billion-dollar exploit in their back pocket and are going to take advantage of it, and they have no incentive to there are incentives to come up with large, if you have issues and you see something, there's real cheddar setting out there to go get. If you can point out a flaw and that flaw is credible enough, you can get paid by the Ethereum Foundation. But I just don't think that it's hard to compete. And it's the same way in the real world. It's very hard to compete if it's only for money. This is the other aspect that's never talked about, is not all the time it's for money. There's malicious reasons that people will attack networks. There might be a competition issue. If somebody's invested a lot of time in developing for another network and they're just like, you know what, Ethereum takes all the limelight. I can never get my stuff seen. And they're an intelligent person that can really do some damage, and they have a 0 day on it and it impacted. These are the things that concern me when you have large changes. Now, granted, anybody can say, hey, this can happen on proof of work. Well, they have every incentive right now to attack it if they can. And it continues to function in Ethereum and in Bitcoin, right? And in Litecoin and in Ravencoin and in Irigo and Flux, right? These proof of work networks have a long history of showing the functionality and their capability working. So there's that concern, right? So now that's just me airing out concern. Has nothing to do with Ethereum's going to move or not on it. It's just part of what I think after the August 5th, and they put a date on it. They put a true date. When Tim was loosely saying September 19th of this year would be the merge date, is that really what's going to happen? And are they going to put it in stone to where they say, here's the date of the merge, and then it goes, like all points bulletin, to everybody, and then it is really going to happen on that day, at least notionally, because they can always change it. They always come back and go, oh, we found something. But I think that's the window after the August 5th to the September 19th. That's the window that those kind of things, one would come up and somebody would pump the brakes on something. I'm still skeptical that they could do it as early as 19th. And what we want to make sure is that somebody's just not racing to failure. I use this a lot on a lot of the development stuff we would do back in the day, where I'd have a product owner really pushing to get something launched. And I'm like, we're just going to rush to failure here, man. Like, we got to do the due diligence on it. It's got to be right. It's not saying that you're moving away from that decision. It's just saying you got to do it. Like, have everybody with enough confidence. And part of that, the Ethereum development team have tried to create test nets and try to show this stuff, but there's just not enough participation to like give people that high level of confidence for whatever reason. Sometimes it's a thankless and a winless job on that. You just got to make the call and just push, but you got to be damn sure that you're ready. And I think that there's some things outstanding that they need to address. That I've highlighted before. And somebody would say, well, that's easy to say tongue in cheek, but what is it? Well, I still see no answer on the Cornell paper. And if you just Google proof of stake, Cornell issues, you'll find two critical issues that if they have been addressed, somebody can share it on a message on here, or their rebuttal to say they don't think it's an issue. And find out. DJ Mine just did a $5 super chat like I'm awesome, my dude. I'll get to that in a little bit, buddy, on the Intel 380. So when we actually find that real date, then I think we start really looking at what's going to happen with those other networks. I think we're already seeing something that's happening with it. We've seen Ethereum Classic start to pump. We've seen a lot of the other proof of work coins start to pump. Now, granted, the whole market's coming up, but Ethereum Classic is pumping harder than Ethereum right now on that. And mind you, it's a smaller dollar point. It's an easier, not as liquid market, so it's easier to move the market on it to where it doesn't have to take a lot of capital to move markets. So to give somebody an understanding of how those things work, it's like a size of pie type of thing where it doesn't take a lot of liquidity to move the price. So you can have a market maker coming in there and just taking a hedge play on Ethereum Classic because they watch something like this or some other videos, or they see the signal to noise saying, what's the next proof of work coin on GPUs? And if the banners just keep smacking Ethereum Classic, Ethereum Classic, Ethereum Classic, that you could start to see some movement in there. You also have a few other coins out there that have been going up with it. So if those get enough parabolic rise, like in this, let's say Ethereum shoots to 2,000, 2,500, and you start seeing a 50 to 70 to $100 Ethereum Classic price, then you start to see a size of pie that could come over to Ethereum Classic, and the network could handle it. If we're looking at a 40% Ethereum hash rate of being ASICs, and let's say 80% of those ASICs can be transversed from Ethereum to Ethereum Classic, which by and large, a lot of them can, because they act more as an FPU. So like a programmable adjustment that will still work on the bits. Essentially, they'll change the bit stream to make it work. And then it comes down to, does it have enough memory to continue to work? So a lot of these ASICs, they leaned out the cost and kept them at like 5 gig. A lot of them do not have more than 5 gigs of memory because they were trying to keep the cost down. And that was the expensive part. High speed, expensive, fast memory is part of the more expensive piece of those ASICs. A lot of the like Bitcoin ASICs and stuff do not require a lot of high speed memory controller and high speed memory, which is again the expensive part. So they lean that cost out, only put 4 gig in them, like on the E3. They only put 5 gig on them, like on the Silicon A10s. And I think some of the A11s and Phoenix have more memory, 6 to 8 gigs of memory. So if those move over to Ethereum Classic, let's say 80% of them, then that's like 300 terahash. Ethereum Classic right now is setting at about 23 terahash. So you're looking at a 10x increase in total network hash rate. So if you are going onto a calculator and looking at the Ethereum Classic current thing, you can go in there and edit what that total network difficulty is. And if you actually go out, and we'll put it at the link in the bottom of this video, the BBT spreadsheet tool that I have sent out to you guys on a couple different things. We've made a few updates to it. Well, in there, you can go in there and change the network difficulty under the Ethereum Classic. So I pull the API in of what the network difficulty, hash rate, price, all that kind of stuff. I do it for like 7 coins in there right now in that tool. And you can go in there and you could do it on some of the online tools too, and go in there and just change a 10x factoring on the hash rate and see what happens. So it's pretty linear. And if you're making $2 a day, you're going to be making, 20 cents on a machine, right? So it immediately just peels it back, and you're probably paying 80 cents to $1 and that same thing in power cost. So it makes it unprofitable, bottom line, for a GPU miner. That's if it had a 10x increase right now, current price. Now, if Ethereum Classic doubles in price and goes to $55 to $70, it still would not be profitable unless you're at like 6 cents per kilowatt, right? So if it's at 300 terahash at $55, you're still under. It would have to be around $80 for you to be profitable at like $80 to $100 to be profitable at like 6 or 8 cents per kilowatt. And this is indicative of if you look at Ethereum back in March of 2020, Ethereum's hash rate went all the way down to 150 terahash because you had a price point that went all the way down to $86. It was like March 14th of 2020. I don't know how I remember these numbers. I do not have this in front of me, by the way. It's just being part of this space for a long time. The hash rate contracted, right, down below 150 terahash, actually. I think it was like 123. And then when it came back up to that $120, $130 range, and it stayed flat for a little bit, you saw that rescinding of that hash rate back to that 180 terahash. So Ethereum Classic is giving us the playbook right now. That's the playbook. What's the price have to be to sustain at least a part of the network? The 300 terahash I was talking about is if 80% of if the total Ethereum terahash size right now is 871 terahash on network, if 40% of those are ASICs, you're in 380 or something terahash. If 80% of those came over, now we're at 330 terahash, moved over to Ethereum Classic, and that was purely ASICs. For them to survive, they're a lot more efficient than the GPU miners, so they don't need $120 price point because their hash rate's at 300 terahash. Where in March of 2020, you had 151 terahash at $86 that kept the GPU miners profitable as long as you were at 8 cents or lower kilowatt. Because the devices, and I have one over here, like the iApollo device, smaller device, 150 mega hash unit, which is about like a 3090 at 100 watts, that would still be profitable at 300 terahash as long as the price is around that $50 to $80. But it wouldn't be for a GPU. A GPU just couldn't compete with that. You really needed to be around $200 to $300 price point to be able to have at least some GPU participation at your 8 to 12 cent per kilowatt. And we're back into the like bear market 2020 days with Ethereum Classic and GPU mining. So where you have these people like, it's doom and gloom, it's never going to be profitable again. It all comes back down to price discovery on some of these other networks. And it could never get there. And there is that possibility, right, on all of them. But there's a difference between that bull market and this bull market with a lot more adoption, more innovation that's going to the different coins. You have Ethereum Classic doing a hard push right now with its own version of like OpenSea and having NFTs and all this. And then if there is an existential issue on Ethereum with this merge and people are looking at other networks that are Ethereum-like, your fastest flash to bang code release can be pivoting from Ethereum back to Ethereum Classic and deploying. So if you already have a lot of sunk development in smart contract development, you could pivot to Solana and risk being shut down randomly. And that's not really a shot to Solana. It was a shot if it was the one time, but they've had like 4 or 5 times they've been shut down. So, or you can pivot to Ethereum Classic that hasn't shut down, but it had some history when it came to double spends on, some of the hash rate getting attacked, which it addressed back in 2020. Or no, 19. It might have been 19. November of 2020 or November of 19. I can't remember. On the Thanos update, where they went in and put a multiple exponential subjective scoring, which is a functionality to prevent a double spend. It causes a difficult check on Ethereum Classic. So they have addressed the issue that they were having with the double spend side. So is it a sustainable network? I think when people would peel it back, they'll look at it and say it's essentially Ethereum. Now, does it have the same development teams? Does it have that? There's a lot of core development members that are on Ethereum 1 that are not going to have a lot of client development time to have to do much client stuff now on Ethereum 1 once they go with the merge and proof of stake moves on. So you have a potential of people that have, it's not just the big names that you see, Peter and a few of the others. You have a lot of developers that have worked on this and worked on Prism and some of the other things that has an opportunity to move over to an Ethereum Classic team if it starts to get some inertia, right? So you have this natural brain trust that can switch between the two networks. You also have a lot of expansive work happening in Flux. You have a lot of expansive work happening on Ravencoin with its NFT launch stuff. So it's got NFTs and it's a UTXO platform. So it's different. It's not a smart contract platform. So it's taken a different approach at the way they handle some of the storage of the network stuff. It does use IPFS like some of these other ones, but between Flux having its innovations, Ravencoin taking its innovation on the UTXO side, Ethereum Classic being able to inherit most of Ethereum's current hash rate when it comes to the ASICs, that's going to happen. People have sunk cost in ASICs. They're going to pivot them over to Ethereum Classic. You're going to see a jump in that. And you're going to have a natural bump in a hash rate because like those iPolo devices I was talking about, they're 100 watts, they're 153 mega hash. Depending on how many of those type of units were made, it makes no sense not to just pivot them or keep them on ETC. It's a low cost of ownership. You'll end up having probably a large distribution of decentralization hash rate, why the price stays low. Because what happened is the larger farms won't have the business case in their mind to be able to sell it to investors to pitch hardware and cost and operations to run large operations on some of these networks. So you end up having a disbursement of that equipment to secondary markets where people pick it up looking for an opportunity. And you end up having a natural distribution on decentralization to happen with that. So that's what we're seeing with like the E9s on Bitmain, right? Bitmain's coming out with the E9s and they're trying to sell these as ETC and ETH miners. And, where are they going to go? Are people going to buy those at the crazy rates that they are right now? I guarantee you, and this is just math, that Ethereum moves on September 19th and Ethereum Classic doesn't react in price-wise, those things are going to be on fire sale. It's just the way it is. Now, that's the speculative, I'm telling you as a guarantee, that's a speculative guarantee, right? Because I'm just doing some basic math to say if Ethereum Classic doesn't move price-wise and then a hash rate's all looking for a space, they're going to have to drop the price of them. And if that makes them lose money, it is what it is. It's the speculative piece on the hardware development that they did. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'm just saying that I wouldn't YOLO into any ASIC devices right now that are expensive because they can mine ETH, given the fact that ETH, may move. Just because we're a lot closer. A year ago when we had this conversation and everybody was fearing the merge, remember in October or December, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way. There's way too much for them to do. There's just specifications. There's annotated outlines. If you guys remember these conversations we had back in this time last year, if anybody's recalling that, because mind you, this was parabolic rise, $4,000 ETH. We had the crash because of the China shutdown. We came back. This price started coming back up. Prices on ETH transactions were crazy. Everybody was screaming for the merge, not understanding that the merge has nothing to do with transaction cost. Your transaction costs are going to be the same, and the validators are going to be getting that cheddar, right? So it is what it is. That's not changing, right? Until they get to better layer 2 solutions, or you have bridges and on-ramps to be able to handle those transactions to where you can send that transaction. The back end wiring of it will be like submit said transaction or do it on wrapped ETH on another network that's layer 2. You're going to have ETH fees as long as you're doing on layer 1, including proof of stake layer 1. So there is no transactional cost advantage doing the two. It's a misnomer. And it's not something that the ETH devs have said would happen. They've told everybody the same thing, like on their defense. They like, dude, this isn't going to drop transaction cost. It is what it is. So, but there's just been so many people that are misinformed on it, and they have some level of influence and are like, go ETH merge. It's going to be cheaper transactions. It's not. So it is what it is. What's up, Son of Tech? Nice to see you here, buddy. But this is where I'm talking about. So if we look at the timeline, let's skip to the timeline. I've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. If the 19th is actually merge date, which I don't think it will be, but if the 19th happens, your real trigger or your buying of the news, which I think is what's happening right now, because people are seeing quote unquote ultrasound money, deflationary events, because the ETH burn rate right now is well over the issuance rate of the POS network, that you have this mantra that because more will be burned than what's inflated, then there's going to be deflationary ETH. It's going to cause like a price spike. And the reality is, and I think we've seen this every time they've tried to reduce the inflation, is that's not necessarily how it goes. And it's completely predicated on everything being okay, that there's no issues on this merge. And mind you, there's going to be a lot of people on the sidelines looking at it and seeing if there's any kind of Solana-like issues where they have to make hard forks after hard forks of critical issue fixes. And this is the one fear I have with it. Without that, and I don't know if there's anything they can do. It might not even be the ETH dev's fault, right? I mean, it could be a question from a thematic standpoint of moving to the merge and not just spinning ETH2 up and letting it do its own thing, and you treat it as its own network, and ETH1's there, ETH2's there, and you can interchange at some point through a bridge. But that's for another discussion, another time, to talk mechanically of how that would be. Everybody's taking a look at just the mechanicals on the pricing possibilities and the factual statements of like there's going to be a less inflation rate on stuff, but that's all if it works, right? So if it does work and there isn't a lot of issues, that is a possibility, then you're going to have the dynamic where nobody can move any of the ETH out and there's no more inflation for a little bit, right? What I mean by that are there's no more sell pressure from the inflation, at least on the ETH standpoint. The ST ETH right now, which I don't know, I haven't looked to see the ST ETH's current price. I know it was decoupled for a bit. But again, that was like looking at the futures price of ETH. And you guys could correct me in the chat if it's corrected itself and if one ST ETH is now worth one ETH, or if it's still running as a less price, because that's effectively like an ETH futures price if you think about it. Like if you're buying ST ETH right now, it's redeemable for one ETH because there's a one-to-one relationship with it. So there could be an arbitrage opportunity on that. But you will not have any ability to move your ETH out of ETH2 until they have the next hard fork. And this has been part of my other concern with it, is what is the incentive if ETH is working after the merge, price goes parabolic. Part of that parabolic is because it doesn't have it doesn't have the sell pressure on ETH1, like ETH itself, because people can't now, sell it for that are on the validators. The only way the validators can sell, people can still sell ETH, right? It doesn't shut the network down. But if you're in a validator and it's locked and you're earning rewards, your version of selling that is selling the ST ETH, not regular ETH that's being produced. So it's created a situation where the incentives, I think, are misaligned there. And I always said, like, if you guys are merging, you have to have withdrawals enabled. It doesn't make sense to me, because your incentive now would be, oh, look what happens when we can't add inflation and we have more burn. Oh, our code, we got to make sure that's right, my dudes. We can't have withdrawals this year. Maybe next year, my dudes. Like, that's my concern, is like, and this, people ask me all the time, like, have you set up a ETH validator? No, I haven't, because I don't want to have my coins held hostage. And I don't want to have to work into a derivative, which is what I said last year about this. I didn't want to have a derivative created from that, which is the ST ETH, which now is at a lesser premium. So now I am not only taking a hit on ETH's price, and it's locked, so I couldn't have got it out when it was $4,000 ETH, because maybe you deposited it back in December of 2021, or sorry, yeah, December of 20. You deposited it at $900 ETH price, and then went to 4,000. You couldn't withdraw it. Then they created ST ETH. And now you're setting on ST ETH, you wrote it down, and now you got to sell it for less of a premium than the current price, right? So that was part of my whole concern. So there's a decoupling, and there's a disincentive to proceed on the completion of that. So they can prove it wrong and quickly, within 3 months, release it, but I haven't seen a valid specification of how they're going to do that on the lock time period. Because remember, you can't stake and then turn around and unstake immediately. There's a behavior, and there's rationale of why you can't do that. It's part of an attack vector with the ability to communicate with the rest of the network, and you have to give that a time period. Like, you have to put a state on it that's saying, I am unstaking this, and that state period has to go for a period of time. Then it becomes releasable, and then you can go do something with it. It's not instant. Because it's not instant, it takes, like, there's things that have to happen. And this is why, I just have questions with it. So that's part of the concern with that too. And I would love to have some ETH devs and people talk. I'd love to have. I tried to get on Debrit with, which is hilarious now, given 3 Arrows Capital stuff with Zitsu or whatever his name is, and Hatsu, because they're super pro. They were super pro this. Obviously, Hatsu went or Zeusen or whatever his name is. I don't know, remember his name. Went pretty long on STETH, and I know that was part of the issue with 3 Arrows Capital. But like these have been concerns that we've had for documented in videos for 2+ years. And it isn't because I had any kind of insider information. It wasn't in because I've had conversations with it. It's literally just taking a whiteboard and drawing out like the risk with it and like the connections and going, wait a minute. Like if it's like doing a SWOT analysis on something, right? And looking at the risk versus the reward versus what the impacts from an economical standpoint is on it, and then seeing that. So these are the concerns I have from like being bullish about ETH the way it is, and this is the reason why it's not has anything to do with if I can mine it or not. We've known since the beginning of mining ETH, since 2015's white paper, since the 2014's white paper, since the 2015 launch. When I remember the first videos that we did in late 2015, early 2016 on teaching people how to mine ETH. One of the very first videos, if you go back to my videos on there and you listen, it's like, hey, well, we're only going to be able to mine this for a little bit, and then they're going to go proof of stake. So let's get some ETH while we can through proof of work. And that was an anticipation that sometime in 2016, mind you, it launched in September of 2015, sometime in 2016, early 2017, it was going to be where we couldn't mine it. And then since then, a lot of things have changed. So Zusu. There you go. All right. So I've been going for about 47 minutes nonstop. I don't know if this was good for people. It was kind of just me venting thoughts and knowledge of just being part of the space and kind of my thoughts on it. Again, I didn't bring up a lot of stuff or anything like that. This was a real quick one because we've been super crazy busy. We have some good content coming to you guys. I think you're going to love tomorrow the video that we put together for you guys. It's hilarious as we try to mine off of a generator. I'm going to set the scene for you. This video. Generator out in the open field. Table L7, which is Litecoin and Dogecoin mining, hooked up to Starlink, completely unattached to anything out in the middle of a field. And the whole premise here is I'm going to be like mining off of Starlink, part of our test. I mean, just from it being funny, that we're mining Dogecoin off of Starlink, decentrally off of a generator, is you know, just I'm testing Starlink's. Are we going to get a lot of orphan shares and stuff? So we're going to let it run for a little bit, but we're going to test normal GPU mining rig. We're going to test the L7, but I think it's going to be hilarious. Just, and maybe we'll get a tag from Elon Musk on this one. I say my dudes a lot too. But let's take some questions. I think you guys will like that. That video. I've seen some awesome other creators here. We got Seb in from let's see, Seb Fintech's channel. We got Son of a Tech. I don't know if you guys are still here. I saw Nemesis on here. Who else do we got? You invite Elon to this open field. I don't know. We might get him out there after he sees it. Watching the stream 2 times in the hot. Nice, man. It is super hot, dudes. I'm so sorry that we all have to deal with this. This damn. I'm not saying global warming is a thing, but I don't remember ever in this area where we've had 4 straight weeks of almost 100 degrees. It's my dude, Todd. Watching paint dry has more appeal, says Amarin. Thanks, my dude. Is there a good proof of work coin you believe in, such as Solana or Nuxo? Neither of those are proof of work, Daniel. Could you explain why ETC's price would go up if miners switch over to the network post ETH merge? The reason why the ETH Classic's price would go is speculators will speculate that the inertia from having all that mining hash rate is front running. Let's look at the facts of what happened. There is a lot of, or what will happen. There's a lot of hash rate. We can see that on the network. There's different types of hash rate. There's ASICs that are only programmed to do ETH or ETH Classic. And then there's GPU miners, which will ebb and flow based on profitability of the particular networks and or complexities and nuance related to their build. Meaning you could have a situation where you cannot mine like ProgPow with like Ravencoin because your setup, it's too task intensive. And you don't have enough power, or you'd have to power down a rig because you just don't have enough power to handle, fully using the GPU. Just the ETH doesn't use as much power unless you tweak their ProgPow setup. So you can tweak it down to where it won't use as much power. It uses the same power as ETH. You just won't get the same level of output. But that is really kind of the determining factor. So you're going to have people that will look at their hardware and say, where can I point it? And some people for at least a few weeks will speculatively just switch and not really pay attention to profitability, and they'll just switch, and you'll have a bump in hash rate. When you have a massive bump in hash rate, it's like a signal to noise thing. So people that are market makers that will not watch a video like this or try to understand what's happening on the macro side of it, they'll look at it and see a massive bump in hash rate and go, something must be happening with this. I'm going to buy a position because it's cheap. And you'll have a natural draw on supply. Now that's short-lived typically because people will look at it and go, oh, it was nothing, I'm selling it. And they'll sell their position or maybe sell just on the way up. So you'll have a bump. I think we're seeing that right now. So if we see a pullback next week, we've seen the lift of the news of Ethereum with this possible merge date, and it's causing the entire market to move. And when you start seeing ETH pumping, it's kind of like the sea. It used to be Bitcoin pumping was the sea that raised all boats. Ethereum and Bitcoin kind of do that. So if both of them are pumping hard, a lot of other stuff comes up with them. And for a range of reasons. Part of it's they keep the same... It literally pulls them up because their ratio, if there's not a lot of activity on it and Bitcoin's pumping artificially, let's say Ravencoin's at 203 Satoshis per coin equivalent, right? So it's 203 Satoshi of a Bitcoin to a Ravencoin. There's not a ton of Ravencoin activity. Bitcoin starts pumping. If that stays at 203, you're pulling up Ethereum, you're pulling up Ravencoin with it. So it's going to look like Ravencoin, even with a little bit of volume, is raising in price because the Satoshi conversion value didn't change. It doesn't automatically adjust, right? It'll sit there at 203. That's the mark price on it. That's the order book. The order book didn't change. Bitcoin's going up. Order book didn't change. Pricing didn't change. 203 Satoshis now is worth more money. So on a USD value, that's why it's good to look at your USD value, and it's good to look at your price versus Bitcoin. And what you'll have sometimes is you'll see when Bitcoin's going up way more parabolically faster than anything else, you'll have a USD value jump in, like, let's say Ravencoin 7%. Well, it's against Bitcoin, it's maybe it went down 5%, right? You'll have a decoupling where one's pulling ahead of another one. But if there's not a lot of market activity or the order books are not moving a lot very fast with one of the other coins rising, if it's based on that other coin, like in Satoshi value, it's going to raise. And that's why sometimes you'll see a decoupling on like USD market to Ravencoin versus Bitcoin to Raven pricing. I'm using Raven as an example because I remember the Satoshi value of it. But that's where you'll start to see some of that. So if you see a bump in hash rate, not predicated on price starts to follow it. And that's why sometimes hash rate can front run price, and price will follow it. And then the inverse of that always happens, right? Price goes up, people chase it with their hash rate, right? So if it gets out of whack and price just goes parabolic, we're seeing that right now again on Ethereum Classic, where you have Ethereum Classic going from $13 2 weeks ago to $26 this week, right? Huge increase. It actually has one of the largest. Hold on, let me check here. Yeah, so right here, you guys can see it right there, right behind me. So Ethereum Classic, if I sort that by last 7 days, 69%. So you had Ethereum Classic going from, wherever it was at to now 23. It's down over the last 24 hours. It's down 8%. So I think that's part of the way the market's reacting to it. They're reading the articles that Ethereum may go proof of work or leave proof of work to proof of stake. The next part of that article is, where's all hash rate go? Well, then they start citing Ethereum Classic. They start citing Ravencoin. They start citing Flux. They start citing some of these other coins a year ago, as an example. Firo, some of these other ones out there that are proof of work that you can mine to. So you start creating this signal to noise. And there's bot trading. There's behavioral analysis stuff that happens where people scrape Twitter's API and look for some signal, and they try to front run that. So without doing a lot of deep research, they're just seeing a lot of signal, and then they start buying it up. And then that's what we see here, where this is the reality of it, right? Lido and it's stuff to do with Ethereum, and then Ethereum Classic here. You got a lot of news on Polygon right now, happening right now with them signing deals with folks to provide layer 2 stuff. Clucker says, all my homies smash that like button. We do appreciate any of the like buttons. I don't make enough of this content. I know. I'm so sorry, my dudes. We've had a lot of stuff here that we're trying to get done. And I would love nothing more to have somebody follow us with a camera and kind of help document some of this stuff. But literally, it's myself. I got BBT Cole kind of working on that, working on some videos for it. You guys have seen BBT 10. Him and I did a video a few weeks ago. But yeah, hopefully we can do, hopefully you guys like the live streams, and we'll have a condensed version of this. Let's see here. I'll take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap this one up. Again, it looked like you guys thought this one was okay. Again, kind of a bleh of stuff. Yeah, Stellar says, I like Ergo. It runs cool and efficient. Ravencoin runs hot. ETC perhaps has the severe price drop when the ASICs try to mine on it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the price will drop. The price may go up with all those ASICs moving over, because you're going to have a lot of security on that network. And it creates this allure that there's something going on there. But at the end of the day, it still comes back down to user adoption. At the end of the day, the difference between why Ethereum still holds that price, why Bitcoin holds its price, even when they come down like this and they have that drive to come back up, is because there's a huge amount of user adoption. They're doing things on it. That's why you're seeing Polygon have its big growth here. People are using it, and there are things that are being built onto it. There's functionality being built on there from a utility and NFT standpoint. It's high-speed transactions. It's inheriting Ethereum's base layer security, and then it has its own, proof of stake, setup. So, and some of these other ones that have utility of something, some function. You got other ones that are trying to prove that they have utility, like Avalanche. Yeah, and Cardano gets I'm not going to get the Cardano people on me, and I'd love to have a conversation with Charles. I've met him a few times. I've talked to him at CES, but I didn't know BBT would be live, or I wouldn't have scheduled it. Oh, do you have a different schedule? Oh, I'm so sorry, my dude. I'm not on a strict schedule. There was already an ETC dump starting. Yep. Oh, that's what you meant. My head. My GPUs right now, our GPUs are still pointed at Ethereum Classic, and we do have stuff on Ravencoin. I got actually a machine in the back right now running Raven. I'm playing around with some settings on it to try to find the most efficiency on Raven with power, to try to keep the power profile as close as I can to Ethereum's power profile, which definitely drags down the heat. You just take a pretty good size hit. So I give you an idea on the difference. So if you take like a BC160 card as an example, it's one that we're working with right now. A BC160 will do about 71 mega hash on Ethereum. And that's a blockchain card. It's the RDNA 2 HBM memory, 8 gigs of HBM memory. It's a specific GPU for, a compute on the AMD side, the latest stuff. So 71 mega hash to 69 mega hash at roughly about 100 watts. You can get it down to 100 watts. Now for Ravencoin, it'll get all the way up to 32 mega hash on Ravencoin. It's pretty good for an AMD card. You're going to use pretty much full TDP on it, which is 150 watts, which isn't crazy actually. 150 watts for 32 is really, really good actually. It's super efficient. It's actually one of the more efficient things out there. Can't wait to actually show you guys a video on it. We had a video a while back, but I want to go a little deeper with it now that we're doing a little more testing with it. But it's a lot less heat usage if we drop it down to where it's only doing 26.5 mega hash on Ravencoin. And it drops that power rating all the way down to like 119. So you don't have to floor it all the time is what I'm trying to say here. And like on like 478 gigs, they'll do 8.5 mega hash on Ravencoin all day long at 90 watts on a 470. Or you can run them at 135 watts and try to get up to 12.5. It's just a math problem, and it's what you want to, what your setup is and what it makes sense from your cost standpoint. I would always step it down, take a little less output efficiency for a lot less heat, especially right now. And that's what anybody that's dealing with heat right now, issues, take a different approach at it. What we're doing right now with some of our high heat stuff is we're stepping them down, bring them down. You don't need to run them at full tilt. I understand if you have an 8 gigahash farm, that's great. Run it at 5 gigahash. Bring your heat levels down, simplify your life, have your consistency set up. And that's the kind of more larger tech op approach on it that I would say is take all your levels down. If you're running 3000 or 3200 memory speed on your RTX cards for Ethereum and you're overheating right now, step them down to 2600. Take all your power levels down. Drop your card that's at 60 mega hash, drop it to 45. Take a hit on it to reserve your stuff. It's just it's really that step that you need to do during times like this. And it's the same thing with the early part of this conversation, where on those folks that have variable power rates, do the algebra. I'm going to have a video on this specifically on how to calculate it. We're going to do this one for you guys, which is taking an example of a variable power rate where there's 3 different pricing targets. There's between peak time, between like 9 a.m. through like 6 p.m. I'm using an example out of Pennsylvania right now that we're helping somebody with. In Pennsylvania, it's 22 cents during that time. So from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., it's 22 cents. Then it drops to 5 cents from 6 at night to 12 at midnight. It's at 6 cents. And then it drops to 3 cents from 12 in the evening to 6 in the morning, right? And then, to 9 in the morning. And then the 9, it starts back at 22 cents. So you have essentially your 8 hours there, 9 hours. And then if you look at that blended cost, it ends up blending it out to be like, 13 cents or something. But if you cut it in half or take out all of the 22 cent thing, you're getting roughly 18 hour, or, 18, you're roughly, 12 and a half to 14 hours of off-peak mining, full tilt. It's in the evenings, probably not as warm. And yes, you're taking a hit. You're taking your load factor on that. It's like ends up going to be like 65%. So it's a spreadsheet that has the different rates where you can go in there and change your rates based on your timing. It sums up all the hours over an entire month, so the count of hours, and then it shows your load factor percentage. Like if you're not going to mine during those times that it's high cents, it's going to show you your pricing and it's going to show you your net change. What it ends up coming down to is why you're taking a 40% drop in your total potential mining, you're saving like 90% of your cost. And that's the algebra that I'm talking about. And that allows you to participate with your rigs, even on an Ether merge to another network, because you're sitting there at 5 to 6 cents a kilowatt on those folks that have variable pricing. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. This is the kind of behavior that allows us all that have that kind of opportunity to tweak when we do it to have our most efficiency and just stretch that yield as much as you can. All right, my dudes. It's been a bit. I know I don't do this enough. I love you all, most of you, besides the guy that said that watching me is like watching paint dry. I still don't hate you because, yes, sometimes I need to land the plane. But we should do this again. I will catch with you guys this week on that video I was talking about with the Starlink. And then we have a few more goodies coming with you on BBT Cole's doing a video. And then we'll get back to it, my dudes. So if you missed something or if somebody said something on there, just put it down in the comments. I always usually read the comments. And hopefully this was a good stream for you guys. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Son of a Tech, stay cool, my dude. I know you're out there sweating, trying to get those rigs switched around. We'll catch up here, and I'll try to get on one of your morning shows, my dude. I know you've been talking about it. I will do one of those with you. Merge prediction, no earlier than October, and I'm putting it out there first quarter next year. Putting it out there.